Hello, friends. Welcome back to Coaches Exploring the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from a Principles Behind Clarity perspective. And today we're reviewing habit 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And this is titled The Principles of Empathic Communication. The first thing I thought about was when Jamie references seek first to understand, then to be understood, he attributes the quote to St. Francis of Assisi, which is funny because every time I hear him say it, and then he goes, "Oh, that was by," and I'm waiting for him to say Stephen Covey, and then he says St. Francis. But I realized actually just this morning, and I don't know if this is one of those weird universe coincidences or not, but my wife and I got married in St. Francis of Assisi parish of the Catholic Church, so kind of appropriate that this habit has kind of been one that it's always really spoken to me, but as somebody who's gone through coach training for the last few years, this chapter should be like a must read for every coach, change worker, therapist, whatever out there, parent, and so on.
Yeah,
it's a hugely powerful chapter.
Yeah, and the thing that struck me as well, that actually it's habit number 5. Like for me, it doesn't have an order, but for me, this chapter is like the overarching thing about all of the habits and about everything Stephen Covey writes about, and everything we do as coaches as well. It's not so much the starting point, but like Jamie will give us, we go from connection, calibration, connection, and education. Like it's that thing that just sits around the outside of all of this. Sits on top. It's not even it's a cherry on the cake, isn't it? But it runs through and intertwines. And for me, it's just it's the basis of everything.
Yeah.
And I love the quote, Blaise Pascal, "The heart has its reasons which reason knows nothing of." That has always been one of my favorite quotes all time, I think, because it speaks to that bit that we so easily ignore, what heart, and for me, where heart would be what Sid Banks speaks about when he says love and understanding. That's what I understand by that. And every time I think we find an answer in the heart reason rather than in the intellectual reasoning. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
I think all of this you just mentioned there, Lynn, especially in the opening, the whole connection and calibration piece. I mean, it's the linchpin of everything, really. What I made a few little notes those weeks ago when we were going to do it, and something that I love the conversation and the different scenarios. I like the little scenarios they do the conversations and talking about. I'm going to talk to my kid and see what's going on, and that does not happen. And what struck me there was, that's when we talk about listening and trying to get behind the mask, because, all of a sudden what comes in is, the judgments and the you shoulds and all the outside stuff. Whereas the kid is trying to give his perspective from what's going on within him. So yeah, that was behind the mask for me.
Yeah, I highlighted this line on the second page on 275. We have such a tendency to rush in to fix things up with good advice, but we often fail to take the time to diagnose, to really deeply understand the problem, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And I wrote down that when I first got into the principles, when I look back now, it's like I was in such a hurry to share the principles, I forgot to first understand what was actually going on with the other person.
Yeah.
And now I see it like so clear. And then even the idea of like he uses the language of our own personal autobiography, but it's like to understand, it's like to truly understand the other person's world. And this is what Jamie talks about too, getting their world. It's not getting their world through the lens of my own personal autobiography. It's not truly like, and Jamie says all the time, like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what they mean when they say this. Like I used to automatically jump to conclusions like, oh, I know what they're saying. But what I've realized with all the training in this time going through CCT again with Lynn is like, even individual words, like I have no idea what that means for that person. I was having a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about the word retirement. It's like, each of you would have, when I say retirement, you'd have a vision for what that looks like or feels like or means, and it would be different than what I'm thinking. There might be some similarities, but like just the idea of like, to truly understand it, I got to ask a whole bunch of questions. I got to be Columbo, like what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
So this time through this chapter, I'm really seeing how much time and how much slower I need to go to really understand somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what you touched on, as you both know, I've just been home with my family, a lot of people in a week. And it's really interesting to notice interaction, especially between parents and kids, because it's a bit like this little story, actually. With the best will in the world, it's like the parent feels like, I've been there, I know. It's like, I've been there, I know. So the kid says, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah. But that's totally from their autobiography. It's like, because, you're not the kid isn't you. It's not the same situation. It's not the same anything. It's not the same anything. It's not the same language. It's not the same feeling. It's not the same anything. Yeah, it's fascinating. It is absolutely fascinating.
I was re-listening to the CD a few days ago that I have for this, and he was kind of surveying the room, said, how many of you have had years of training on how to speak? And like everyone puts their hand up. How many have had years of training on how to write? Everyone puts their hand. How many have had years of training on how to listen? And virtually nobody puts their hand up.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, it's like, oh, that's what I've been paying all this money to Jamie for the last 2.5 years. Is this has truly been listening training that we've been going through.
Yeah, it's not at all like listening. It sounds to me like it's not considered as a skill like speaking, writing, and reading. Let's say it's almost as if we've so we've been given ears, so we will listen. It's like nobody considers that there's a certain quality and skill and ability, and there is an ability to read, write, and speak that is possible because you can listen. So like, again, whereas nobody teaches you how to listen, it's perhaps of the 4 skills, communication skills, it's again the most important. And yet centuries, thousands of years just ignored. It's taken for granted.
Yeah. I think going back to what you said at the beginning, Elaine, about this kind of being foundational or the first habit, like it all comes down to listening.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. Listening, and I guess we need to add the with love and understanding.
Yeah.
Which I guess also means without judgment.
Yeah. And it's funny because as I'm saying the word listening, it's not even like listening is probably the wrong word. It's understanding is like seek first to understand. It doesn't say seek first to listen.
No, it's about receiving.
Yeah.
Well, everything that your senses can allow you to receive.
Yeah.
From another person or situation or event.
Yeah.
So.
The next thing I highlighted was on 276. The real key to your influence with me is your example, your actual conduct. Your example flows naturally out of your character or the kind of person you truly are, not what others say you are, blah, blah, blah. But I highlighted that kind of person you truly are. And it was like, oh, that's who you really are. That's the real you. And you used the phrase earlier, Lynn, behind the mask. It's like, yeah, that's the key, the who we really are, and the who your client really is is the key to this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's something about speaking to me as well, just as you spoke there, Greg, something about how listening also provides a key to trust.
Mm.
After the part that you read, you know, if your life runs hot and cold, if you're both caustic and kind, and above all, your private performance doesn't square with your public performance, it's hard for me to open up to you. You know, because I don't know who you are anymore. I can't see who you are anymore. And I don't trust you with that.
Mm.
But if our approach, even when we're actually speaking, it's, let's say, it's listening to your very own speaking, and that we're mindful of, again, think love, understanding, trust, empathy, of course, then the who you really are will naturally come out. And that's what I kind of feel he's trying to say here, or at least that's what I'm picking up on. And the listening, I think, is the first place where you're going to have access to who you really are.
Yeah.
First and foremost for self, and then within the communication you may have with somebody else.
Actually, the paragraph, the paragraph underneath the one you just read, Elaine, it starts with, "But unless I open up with you," this really is talking. It goes on to talk self to self. Both people have to be open and honest and curious, and for anything to go anywhere. And that's kind of what that's pointing to. Or else, yeah, what you say is good and fine, but it doesn't quite pertain to me. You know, if I'm not opening up with you and you're not hearing me, then we're not going to get anywhere. Yeah.
The next thing
we could just about think it was, sorry,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
No, I'm just reading these. It's nice to be reminded of these paragraphs, because you can think about just about any relationships that break down, and therein lies the key. You know, that's it, or you know, arguing or misunderstandings, or you know, tense households, whatever. It's, you know, this is the key, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you can trace back all of those disputes to seeking first to be understood, and rather than seeking first to understand.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead then, Greg.
Yeah, I was going to say at the top, 277, empathic listening is the heading. Says seek first to understand involves a very deep shift in paradigm. We typically seek first to be understood. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. And I think back to my whole business career, countless hours in meetings of people who did not want to listen to each other. They just wanted to rebut each other's point of view. And it was often whoever, I don't know, demonstrate. It was kind of like, you know, being in the jungle with a bunch of apes pounding their chests. It was like, you know, whoever pounded their chest the loudest. Okay, everyone just said, okay, we'll do what this guy wants, because he's he wins. He's the alpha, or I don't know, whatever. But
Yeah.
It was. I just think back to so many scenarios in my career where this played out exactly the way Covey describes it here. People seeking first to be understood, or with the intent to reply. Like, they're not even listening. They've already got their argument made up.
I love it. And right there, oh, I know exactly how you feel. I went through the very same thing. I mean, how often do you hear that? Yeah, I've been there, done. Yeah. And you're like, no. Wasn't like that at all. Yeah, it's funny.
And Jamie uses the metaphor of getting on their raft a lot. I always struggled with, I don't know why, but maybe I don't have enough raft experience or not, but I've always struggled with that metaphor. So I've often replaced the idea of the raft with the map. But Covey talks about empathic from empathy. Listening gets inside another person's frame of reference. You look through it. You see the world the way they see the world. You understand their paradigm. You understand how they feel. And that was the first time I really was like, oh yeah, the raft is kind of looking clearer to me now. Like, it's looking through their eyes, looking through their, basically becoming them in a way. I also like that he points out, like, empathic listening is not that you agree with someone. It's that you fully, deeply understand the person. So it's not sympathy or agreement. It's like the distinction between empathy and those things, I think, was very key for me too. And then, Elaine, you talked about the clarity model, calibration, connection, education. Covey talks about you listen with your ears, but also, and more important, listen with your eyes and with your heart. You listen for feeling and for meaning. And again, like, it was like, oh yeah, he's talking about calibration.
Yeah. And connection, I think, very much so. At the moment, sort of, we have the situation of seeking first to understand. Then it's not so much about creating a connection, but being able to sort of step into it, if we take as true the fact that the connection is always there anyway. But it's sort of the key to stepping into it, the seeking first to understand. And then the sense of connection, in the sense, again, going back to the only thing that can happen in a true, let's say, 100% connection, is, again, love and understanding. That's the only thing that can happen, because there's nothing else in a connection other than that. But we've got to step into it, for some, if anything useful is going to come out of the communication that ensues.
Another thing I highlighted here, he says, empathic listening is also risky. It takes a great deal of security to go into a deep listening experience, because you open yourself up to be influenced. You become vulnerable. And the note I wrote for that is, like, grounding. Like, I think this is in the training we've done with Jamie, the importance of grounding. Like, you need to, when you know who you really are and nothing can hurt you, then you can listen with empathy. You can be vulnerable. Like he says, it's funny, it's risky, but the truth is, when you're grounded, it's not risky at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and I wrote exactly that. Whereas Covey suggests that's why habits 1, 2, and 3 are so foundational. And I wrote grounding there, but thinking really, again, without habit number 5, we haven't quite got to the grounding. You know, I would definitely, again, place it more here. The clarity sense of grounding, you know, the fullness of it, that deep rooted certainty that will transpire through deep listening and understanding, of course. And
he refers a couple of things. He refers, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
No, I love his reference to psychological air, giving people psychological air. I thought that was, that speaks volumes, actually. There's something, it's something about being truly available in that, I think, which goes back to the grounding being necessary for that to be even possible.
Yeah, and it makes me think of the oxygen mask metaphor when you're on a plane, right? Put on your own mask first. Like, you can't give somebody else psychological air if you don't have your own psychological air already handled.
Yeah,
and it's next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival, to be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, to be appreciated.
Yeah. And just on page 281, diagnose before you prescribe. It sounds like, as he's written it here, it's almost laughable. You know, it's like, well, right, yeah, of course. You know, it's a no-brainer. Reading it like that, it's like, oh, of course. I mean, like, you know, would a doctor just, as you walk in and he just says, okay, take some of these, and you walk out again? Well, you know, like, what? Of course not.
Yeah.
And again, underlying, of course, that is the understanding of what on earth is going on. Has to be first thing in place. It's just common sense, really. It's almost embarrassing to read that chapter, you know, when you haven't, you know, you have no knowledge of coaching or anything at all. It's pretty, it's kind of humbling. It's like, oh.
It's kind of funny, because the stories I think of is like, my wife used to get strep throat all the time. She ended up having to get her tonsils out, but she could feel it coming on, so she would go to the walk-in clinic, and she wanted to skip the whole diagnosis process. She just wanted the drugs. I know what's wrong. I just need a prescription for the whatever it was, these antibiotics, and she almost like argued with the doctor because he wanted to go through the, you know, he doesn't know who the hell she is. She just walked into the clinic, and we need to ask you questions and go through your medical history and so on. So yeah, it just kind of funny that way.
Yeah.
It's funny. I noticed in the book here on the CD I listened to, he tells this story about his daughter Jenny and phoning the doctor who was at the football game, and his wife phoned, and then he's like, "Oh, do you think the doctor realized she's just a baby?" She's like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, well, you better phone him back." He's like, "No, you phone him."
Yeah.
And when he phones, he says, "Oh, this is Dr. Covey." And then he makes a joke on the CD. He goes, "You know, the kind of doctor that doesn't do nobody no good." He always makes me laugh with that little joke. And it's funny too. I was thinking about what this thing, if you don't have confidence in the diagnosis, you won't have confidence in the prescription. So my mom, she go to the family doctor. She'd go to a specialist first. She had like kidney problems and heart problems, all kinds of things that contributed to her passing. But she would go to the specialist, and then she'd do the follow-up with her family doctor. And the family doctor would, in front of my mom, would be reviewing the notes or whatever from the specialist, and she'd be going like, "I don't know why he prescribed you this drug," or "I don't know why." And I'm thinking to myself, like, you're totally undermining the confidence in the diagnosis here, because you're disagreeing. publicly in front of the patient with the specialist. And it's like, if you don't agree with what the specialist said, that's fine. Get on the phone and talk to them and figure it out, and then tell the patient. You don't do that in front of the patient. Like, it used to drive me crazy that because my mom would come home and like be in tears and like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and I don't know who to believe, this doctor or that doctor. Anyway, it was not good.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you just, said, why didn't they sort of talk to each other first? Again, that's a question, as he says later on. You have to have the integrity that's behind you're listening, you're trying to understand and again, if maybe one or both of the doctors had listened to the, deep enough to understand also the psychological side of the physical situation that's going on, that would never have happened. And that is indeed the word that I underlined there, is integrity.
Yeah.
Which is another, I think, for me, a big word, important word, and an important sense. And in the skill of listening and the seeking to understand, it has to come from a solid grounding and a solid basis of integrity. Which, even at a maybe different level, is, how many times we've gone even into a store, or you've taken back a product, maybe a computer, something like that. Oh, it doesn't work, this, that, and the other. And they'll try and convince you that, because they don't want to use the insurance or whatever. I don't know what it is. When the only answer that really is available is, I don't know, I'll find out. How many times does that get overlooked?
Yeah.
You don't have to just blurt something out because you're afraid to look really stupid and I mustn't, they think I don't know anything about my job.
Yeah.
So they give a answer, which could, in the case of you looking as a doctor, it could be pretty, life-threatening kind of thing. Just being able to say that you don't know, perhaps. Or that it's even not your place to answer. But if we come from a place where, let's say, we suppose that we know what we know best, then obviously that's going to preclude any possibility of admitting to yourself, first of all, that you don't have the answer.
Well, and I think that comes back to the idea of grounding and
exactly,
being comfortable with being vulnerable.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
He tells this little story of the boy and the dad. I don't know if I can't remember if it was his son. School is for the birds, and this whole.
Oh yeah.
The part I highlighted was that he said it opens a soul to soul flow, like deep listening. And again, I'm just on the lookout for things that Covey is talking about that connects directly with the principles and this idea of your true. That when I interpret it opens a soul to soul flow, that's a true self to true self connection. Is when you get into this deep listening, empathic listening with another person, give them psychological air. It's almost like that psychological air lets the ego kind of, I don't know, satisfy the ego, so the ego can just go, okay, this is a safe place.
Yeah.
And then the soul to soul thing can happen. But when I read these stories, of course, I'm flooded with a litany of examples of my interactions with my own children where things did not play out so well. usually because of my own seeking to give advice before, prescribing before diagnosing. At the end of that story, he says, by seeking first to understand, this father has just turned a transactional opportunity into a transformational opportunity. And again, I thought, oh yeah, that's the business we're in right there.
Yeah.
Transformation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just spoke to the ego there a second, Greg, and underneath it says, instead of interacting on a surface, get the job done level of communication. He's created this situation. So this is all insight friendly space right here. Leaving that to do the heavy lifting instead of going down the advice or your own autobiography or your ego or
Yeah. And speaking of insight-friendly space, the next thing I highlighted says, often when people are really given the chance to open up, they unravel their own problems and the solutions become clear to them in the process.
Yeah.
So it's not that empathic listening finally gives you an opportunity to give them the right advice. It's like there's no advice required.
Yeah.
What we're after here is insight. And Jamie, one of my favorite Jamie quotes, so I've referenced it in the last couple of days on different posts, is the only thing that makes a difference for a person is an insight they have for themselves.
Yeah.
Highlighted, when people are really hurting and you really listen with a pure desire to understand, you'll be amazed at how fast they will open up. They want to open up. And when I read that, I thought of, when I watch Jamie do his laser coaching with people, I've always been amazed at how quickly he gets them to open up, basically, or I don't know, that's probably the wrong wording, him getting them to do it, but they open up, and I've been amazed watching. But it's his ability to so quickly get to a place where they feel understood and comfortable in a Zoom room full of strangers.
Yeah.
And obviously, by the time you get to the end of a program, you become friends with a lot of people, like we have. But in the beginning, people are pouring their hearts out, talking about really personal, deep things. But it's that space that's been created. Holding that space and letting people open up.
Yeah. Which again, to me, as you say that, also that speaks also to me of courage, which is often, we mistakenly understand that courage is something out there to be acquired if you can have it, if you can find it. I'm just a scaredy cat. I can't do anything, this, that, and the other. I just really need some courage or some confidence or something. But that speaking to people and people coming in at the beginning of these kind of programs, and just the ability that Jamie has to just somehow they feel they can just say anything. The deepest, darkest fears or whatever can just come out. That to me is, speaking because of listening and understanding and empathy. That that is speaking to the person's wisdom directly so that it can manifest. Again, in a very sort of pure, essential way. I think of the times when I've come on for coaching with either one or both of you, or with Jamie, or with whatever, and I've always been very surprised at the very fact that I've been able to say some of the things that I've said. So, where did that come from? Like things that you think you don't even admit to yourself.
I think I've heard you say the phrase of like, okay, well, here it is, or something to that effect. Like, I wasn't going to say this, but all right, here we go. It's great. Anyway, speaking of courage, I'm going to have to take the courage to put an end to this conversation.
Yeah, you are,
because we're out of time, and but this has been a fascinating one. I'm glad we got to do Habit 5.
Finally, Habit 5.
Next time we'll be into habit 6, synergize, which I feel like the 3 of us have been doing for quite a long time with each other. So until then, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks,
See you
Lynn.
soon. See you.